Hi folks, and welcome back to The Plot. I have been very busy since I last saw you. I've actually just come into the polytunnel and I forgot how much I'd done, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. So today, the main thing that we're going to be looking at is the Autopot setup. Now, I've already done a video on a proper in-depth Autopot setup, so I will link that in the description. If you've clicked this because you want to learn a bit more about Autopots or how to set them up, go and watch that one first. Today, I'm going to be resetting up the Autopots in the polytunnel, and I'm going to be looking at the kind of extension kits. Last year I had 4 pots. This year I've just got a couple of extension kits which look really, really good. But first I want to talk a little bit about the other irrigation system that I wanted to use in the tunnel this year. Autopots, tried, tested, impressive. I loved them last year, absolutely amazing. Full disclosure, they were gifted to me by the company. There are so many plants in here. Very difficult to find a place for the camera, but we're going to try. We're going to try and show you how much there is to harvest in here. Now, something that wasn't gifted to me by a company and something that I just wanted to try out was a little solar irrigation setup. Drippers, basically, that go into the soil. So this is what I've been very, very busy on as well. Last time you saw, there was a lot of work to do on this polytunnel bed. You can see now it's all been weeded and freshly mulched with horse manure. Still a few crops in there and still a little while until the tomatoes go in. But the idea is all these strings, all these support strings are for tomatoes. And I thought it would be good to have a little bit of automated watering just as a bit of a backup, you know, and also so that if we were going to go away for the weekend or for the week, then I wouldn't be too worried or panicked. Now, what I got is this little solar pump. It's a tiny little 3-watt solar pump. And I did do a video where I set this up, but it was proper, you know, busy man. Just came up very quickly, unboxed it, didn't really know what he was looking at, hasn't done any research on irrigation or drip systems or anything like that. Now, don't get me wrong, I am still basically clueless, but I have a much better idea how this thing works because I set out all of the irrigation spikes and had a little play around with it. Please forgive the mess and all the Autopot stuff, we will get onto that, but what I did, one of the things I was concerned with is whether or not these little blue spikes were going to equalize the pressure along the line. Now the line currently goes up this side and then snakes back around because I wanted kind of 2 drippers for each 3 tomatoes. So the idea is there's a dripper there between the tomatoes, imagine the strings of tomatoes at the end, and then there would be another dripper in there. And what I did is I just got these little saucers out, not very scientific, but I just ran the pump and I had one at the start there and one at the finish. And I am very pleased to say that it looks like a roughly equal amount of water has gone into both. Obviously, not very scientific. It's just a saucer. It's not measuring anything, but they look roughly the same. It's same enough for a tomato plant. Now, the issue is, I'm no tomato, but looking at this, I think I would be quite thirsty if I was a tomato. I doubt there's any tomatoes watching. If there are, let me know in the comments below. But this is basically the saucer for 2 days worth. So the maximum setting that you can put this on is pumping once a day for 10 minutes. And it does about 400 milliliters per minute, which gives you 4 liters. Now, then you have to divide the 4 liters by each drip. The system comes with 14 drippers, so I assumed that's kind of roughly what it was rated for. I did buy a few extras because I wanted to put about 20 in. Now the problem is 4 litres divided by 20 gives you about 200 milliliters per plant per day, which unfortunately I just don't think that's really going to cut it for a thirsty tomato plant in the height of summer. And I can't really see any other way around it. I'm not even sure if you put in, you know, maybe 8 drips, would the pump then do 4 litres divided by 8? Or do the drippers kind of stop a certain amount of water coming out? I'm not really sure, but not ideal. I mean, it will still be nice to have. It will still be a little bit of a backup, 200 milliliters per day per plant. It's better than nothing. I'm not exactly going to not use it, but I did think this was a very useful introduction to comparison with the Autopot. So a very quick recap on Autopots. It depends, one of the things about Autopots, incredibly modular. You can buy every piece of this individually, but they do generally come in kits. So I've started with the 4-pot kit, and with that you get this reservoir, enough blue piping, 4 of these little trays, and 4 pots as well. And this is basically at the center of the Autopot. You have a feed in, you get a valve and then you plonk your pot in here like this. Now in here you put in like a base and some other bits and bobs. Like I say, there's a full setup guide in the video description below. But what this valve does is it basically lets the plant, and each individual plant in the system, which is a very cool thing, each individual plant dictate how much water comes in. Because of the way this little float valve works, it basically lets enough water in and then it cuts off the line when it reaches a certain level. It stops, it waits until the plant and the soil have absorbed all that water, and then it clicks on again and lets more water in. Whereas a pump system, basically the dripper will dictate how much water. You can get adjustable drippers, obviously, so some of the drippers will let out a bit more if you've got a thirsty plant, and you can tighten them up. You can get pressure compensating drippers and that kind of thing. But the Autopot is automatic. The clue is in the name, I guess. It does it for you. The only manual thing you have to do with the Autopot, aside from setting them up, which is what I'm going to do shortly, is filling up the reservoir. Now, if you connected this to a series of water butts or something like that, rainwater harvesting and collection, then you can kind of automate that part as well. What this is quite handy for though as well is kind of fertigation and feeding. So I quite like to just keep it as this for now, and then I can put any liquid feed in here. But it's just been very interesting to me actually seeing the difference between the solar irrigation, which I thought was going to be, that solar irrigation system was about £25, so super cheap. The main thing about Autopots, quite pricey, but you do get an awful lot and it feels like it is built to last. This is my second season with them and the results were sublime first year, so I think they're worth the money if you've got a bit to spend, not just in terms of being able to take your foot off the pedal and relax and go away for the weekend and not worry, but also in terms of the actual results with your plants. I've never had plants as good as in Autopots. Still not quite 100% sure what to do with this system. I did actually buy two as well because they were so cheap. I thought, you know what, I'll get two. I'll have a bit of spare pipe that I can use, and I might be able to set something up for my greenhouse as well, you know, watering the chilies in there. For a chili pepper, I think maybe 200 millilitres a day in a pot or something like that might be a bit better, but even then in the height of summer in a greenhouse, maybe not actually. But now it's time for me to set up the Autopots. Now what I've got here is last year's measurement. So this blue pipe is too small. I had them really close together last year because I was cramming them into a greenhouse. We've got a little bit more space to play with here now in the polytunnel, but we're going from 4 to 6, so they get massive in these pots, which I believe are, they're either 12 or 15 litres. I can't remember, I'll put that on screen. They might be 15. So what I'm gonna have to do is kind of take this bit of piping out. It's easy enough to do. These little valves just lift out and then the pipe should pull through. It's a little bit tricky. Ideally, you would space it out first time and then not have to redo this and recut these, but it shouldn't take me too long. And I was very glad to see that in the add-on pack, you get an additional pot, you get some more membrane to go at the base, and as well, very pleased to see that you get some additional little connectors, which is very good because I need these to give me a little bit of extra space and add in the right bits to the irrigation pipe that comes off the main reservoir. You get a really decent length of pipe with these pots as well, so you can add these on quite far away from your existing setup. The other thing that is really cool that I'm trying out this year is the divider. So over here you can see I've got one pot and this has 4 chili peppers in it, some of which are these the milds. I think these are the mild peppers. Yeah, these are my milds, so they are fruiting really quite early. And I just want to lift this up and have a little look because I think some of these are probably ready to go into the full-size pot now. If you're interested in kind of automating some of your allotment or garden setups, do go and have a look on the Autopot website. They have all sorts of different products that might meet your need if you don't want something like these pots. Now, I'm being quite careful here. They look like they're not quite, I was going to say they're not quite root bound. On this side, do not drop these, JB. On this side, there is some really strong root growth. These could basically go into bigger pots now. Okay, whoops, one casualty. Don't look, anyone. Never mind, we'll just pop him back in. This is the one with the least root growth, actually, the slowest plant. So it makes sense that the roots aren't as strong holding it together. I had these in this kind of very temporary setup with a few of these pots with the divider and 4 plants in each, but now I need to spend a little bit of time going around and just setting these out in the right space, trying to give them enough room and making sure that the piping can get to them. One of the things that is quite interesting about these Autopots is that once you come off of here, you can connect either with cross pieces or T pieces. And last year I had these with crosses, and one on that side and one on this side. What is interesting to note is that because of the way that these are set up, with the valve always on one side, you get a bit of an opposite thing going on. So this pot over here is kind of offset from this one, and I'm unsure whether or not to do crosses. I think I will use the cross again this year, but you could also use T's and have them offset a little bit more. The thing with the polytunnel this year is you lose a little bit of height when you come over to this side, so I'm pushing them all a little bit that way, but we'll figure it out and then we'll get it all plumbed in. We have it. Autopot system all plumbed in. I've switched it on, which is going to be perfect for these ones and these ones. These ones might be getting a little too much water, but what you can do is you get a little orange valve, and you can, if you really want to, turn the valve on and off for individual things if you slot it in there. What I have done in terms of the layout, it looks a little bit weird. You see the feeder line is on that side, and that is because, maybe ambitiously, but I'm hoping I will be able to, in future, if I really need to come in here to do supports or pruning or something like that, I've got enough-ish space while the plants are relatively small to get in here. Once they really start to grow, I'm sure that in there might become off limits, but I've given them a little bit of space either side as well. And one thing that is quite good about this, because the pipe is quite flexible, you can, so long as you don't cut it too short, you can put them roughly in place and then jiggle them around a little bit afterwards if you need to. I have just got these on soil and then on the membrane there, so they're a little bit wobbly, so there's a few little bits of wood here and there just to make sure they're nice and level. That is something that you do want to have with the Autopots, a nice and level surface so that the plant can absorb the water evenly, and it ensures that the aqua valve can continue to work properly. If you're interested in getting Autopots, once again, I will put a link in the description to my previous setup video, and you can get a 10% discount if you use my code in their store. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this one. An extra special thank you to all of my Chili Pepper tier patrons: Tony, Bill, Pam, Louise, Mel, Michael, Denise, Socks in the Garden, Andrew, Sarah, Dorcasaur, Louise, Angela, Andre, and Brett. Hopefully I will see you again in the next one. I'm so pleased to have this done.